In the shadow of Monday's celebration of the MLK holiday, a discussion on holding difficult racial equity conversations between friends, coworkers, teachers, or students, it can be tough.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy.
Yeah, so in today's Relationship Reboot, we're going to find out some of the ways to start these difficult conversations. Joining us now is our relationship guru, Michael Walker. Thanks so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so let's just start with why is it that these conversations are so difficult?
Well, because they evoke some emotion on sides, right? So people are dealing with their emotional responses, and then there's things that we see in our society that are just not right for certain people, and so folks want to see change, and so that emotion comes up, and so those conversations can be very difficult to have.
Mm-hmm. But important, though,
very
to have
important.
them.
Must have them. Must have them.
Even
yes.
though they can make people feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
And make people angry, perhaps, at each other sometimes.
For sure. And the process about being uncomfortable is that there's going to be conversations, right? And so there may be some things that you don't agree with that the other person is stating. And what we tell our young people is that when you're uncomfortable, that's when you're learning. Right? So how do we be okay with that uncomfortableness to learn what somebody's other perspective is and how they are coming across? And so it's important to kind of sit with that and not be judgmental, but try to hear the actual message that the person is delivering.
You have some strategies to help people out, because the reality is I think we're seeing kind of an evolving viewpoint on whether or not, especially like if you're talking about conversation about race, there are many minorities who feel, hey, it's not my job to educate you, the white person, about injustice. Like, you need to do some work. But sometimes there are people who do want to have these conversations, and
for sure.
But you don't necessarily want to do it right in the middle of a business meeting, right?
Not all the time. I mean,
maybe you do. Maybe it's needed.
Sometimes it may be needed. Sometimes maybe
need to call it out.
But sometimes you want to make sure you step away, right? And how can you have those individual conversations? We want to make sure that we're not always making people feel like you're targeting them. So how do you have those conversations? One thing I talk about is how do you make the playing field a little bit even, so we shouldn't have a power dynamic where one person is standing and one person is sitting. We should kind of either both be standing or both be sitting. That kind of changes the landscape. One thing, we have to be open to the dialogue and conversation, right? How can I make sure that I'm willing to hear the information? Because like I said, there will be some emotional responses to this, and sometimes people show emotion in different ways. Some people get angry, and some people kind of get cold with the anger, where they just kind of move away. And what I like to say is that how do we be curious with our frustration or anger, which is about asking more questions so people have the opportunity to explain and discuss what it is they're learning or their perspective on certain topics.
One of the recommendations you have is for people to use specific examples.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, that's because you want to try to be local and immediate, right? If we start to talk about the bigness of all this, it can take us down so many rabbit holes, and we may lose the focus of what we're actually discussing and talking about. And so how do we keep that right there in a space so that we can both be in tune with what we're discussing and using those specific examples?
If we start from the scenario of two friends, how do you suggest getting the ball rolling and getting a conversation going?
Well, if they're two friends, they should be able to just jump into it right away.
Should be, but you know, maybe you're friends on the basketball court and you're not having those conversations, right?
For sure. So I would say that's the part about being curious. So how do you welcome them into the conversation? Say, hey, so this, I heard you say this, or this happened. Can you explain to me why you did it that way or why you saw it that way? And now you give that person an opportunity to explain kind of what took place and what happened, and now you can both be in conversation and dialogue. One key to this is that we have to be understanding and try to take in the information and understand their perspective, not just listening to get my point across, but listening for actual understanding. And then in these conversations, we want to make sure that we're not trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong, but how do we learn and grow and understand different perspectives.
And understand it can happen incrementally, too. We're not going to solve all the world's problems in one conversation, or two, or 10.
Not at all, not at all. So that's definitely important to understand that piece, that this is just the start of those conversations, and the more we can have them, the better off we'll be as a society.
Michael Walker, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me, I appreciate it.